Alright, so ladies and gentlemen of the DCU, today we are doing a news roundup. There's a few tidbits that I want to get into revolving DCU Batman. There's some Superman stuff out there with regards to a casting. Other little things that I'm sure you guys will be very interested in. As always, this video is time-stamped. But first of all, we need to talk about what happened in the past day. Now, if you attended my live stream last night, you may already know about this. You may already know about this if you're kind of locked into DC news anyway. But yeah, let's just say things got pretty interesting when it came to a potential role for Superman Legacy, a villain role that may or may not kind of confirm the leaks that happened surrounding Superman Legacy, the conflict in the Middle East and everything like that from quite a few months back now. So we're going to get into that and what that means now with that plot point. But also, the biggest thing is how this actor speculated that maybe, just maybe, he got let go due to his views on supporting Palestine, and how this, obviously, with everything going on right now, when this first dropped, as you can imagine, people were just like, what the hell? What the hell is going on? To the point of where James Gunn had to get involved. So, Gunn, eventually, I guess jumping forward a little bit, finally came out in a very James Gunn way. He came out here with the words, "This is accurate," quoting this IGN article here, which summarizes what happened. So, comedian and TV presenter Bassem Youssef made headlines earlier this week by telling Salon that he believes he was cut from the upcoming Superman Legacy because he spoke out about the conflict in Gaza, specifically in a viral interview with Piers Morgan in October. This is where, like, this story was developing so quickly. This article came out, people were talking about it, and then boom, other articles coming out with a source close to the production. So obviously James Gunn, DC Studios, the PR, Peter Safran caught wind of this, and they were like, oh god, like we really need to, we can't just kind of let, I was speculating that maybe it wouldn't be addressed, but the situation is when someone like Bassem Youssef, even though he didn't accuse them, he speculated, and that's important because, again, whenever headlines like this come out, I know I'm going on a bit of a tangent, people just instantly and impulsively react. And I understand with this particular situation that's going on in the world, it's very, very sensitive, so the thought of something like that perhaps being true would really piss a lot of people off, especially, when there's other things going against it with other people on the cast who have expressed their views. It wouldn't really make sense, right? So a source close to the production, however, disputes Youssef's timeline, telling IGN that Youssef's character was dropped from Superman Legacy well before the Piers Morgan interview. The thing is with Bassem Youssef even thinking that, is this the case? Is this kind of the case? I don't necessarily blame him for even speculating that, because clearly it wasn't really communicated to him, I guess, as to why he no longer had the role. But the reason why I don't necessarily blame him is because, we've seen it before as well, where people have expressed their views who are a part of big movie franchises, and they have actually lost their role as a result of it. So this is where the situation maybe starts to make a little bit more sense. And that is because, with enough rambling here, the strikes. So in this Deadline quote here, they say, "We hear that Youssef taped an audition pre-actor strike for the role of Rumour Hajadi. However, by the time Gunn turned in his final shooting strike or script post-writer strike, ending in late September, that role was cut. This was all before the tragic events of October 7th, 2023, hence per the Superman Legacy production source. No official ask was made to Youssef, given that the actor strike was still ongoing in late September and didn't end until early November. No communication about Youssef obtaining or not obtaining the role would have been communicated to him." And yeah, technically, if you're strictly following the rules of the strike, that seems to add up. So long story short here, the situation isn't the way it was initially presented, but as things like this erupt on social media and little tidbits of the story come out piece by piece, yeah, let's just say it does pique people's interest to the point of where, as I said, people really do just like jump off the cliff and go straight into it before trying to hear the whole story. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't have certain thoughts, but I would always recommend, if you can, remove your bias from any situation, even the one that you would like to be in favor for, and hope it turns out for the best. Just try and always see both sides and wait for all the information before, writing a tweet, hang drawing, quartering whoever is initially at the wrong end of the stick, or so it seems to be, if that makes sense. And not only that, because this is what I did want to say as well, when this first came out from studio insiders, I would always say, don't necessarily believe studio insiders claiming otherwise against Bassem Youssef's word as well. Because of course, any studio would always try and steer the conversation in a way that hopefully remedies the situation. Whether they're right, like honestly, whether they're in the right, or so it seems to be in this situation, or if they're in the wrong, they will always be like, oh, I don't know about that. A good example, in my opinion, and this is just my own personal opinion here, with the Gal Gadot situation, where she claimed in like 4 different quotes that she would be returning to the role of Wonder Woman, and that Peter Safran and James Gunn had basically reassured her that this was the case. And there was multiple tweets from Gunn from his time starting at DC Studios seeming to kind of support that, but he's never come out and said anything publicly. But there was a piece that came out to Major Trades in where it said from a studio insider at DC Studios that they're basically refuting Gal Gadot claims. Now, I kind of still, even though I want a new Wonder Woman in the DCU, I still kind of low-key believe Gal Gadot here. I don't know if it's a good example, but even though the studio insiders seem to be correct here with this story about not firing Bassem Youssef, his role was lost because script changes happened well before the interview thing that happened in October. It's nothing to do with his opinions or his support with regards to Palestine. You can't always believe everything at face value when it comes to a studio insider says this, because too often I see people say when there's a defense piece that's gone out from an insider, they're like, oh, see, it was wrong. It's like, so you're believing the PR recovery of the defense piece from an insider? That still doesn't definitively prove anything. Now, the reason why I say the studio insiders are right this time is because Gunn has come out himself to say a little bit more about it, and this would be quite bold to do if he was lying. So that's why I say it seems that DC, didn't actually in fact do what Bassem Youssef was speculating about. So we have Gunn saying there isn't one word against the other here. Bassem and I talked and we're good. I understand how he thought things might be, which he was clear about in his interview, and I told him the whole story. So he's literally saying, he basically called him up, like, as this was all unfolding, probably, as the articles were coming out from the studio insiders, before Gunn said, this is accurate. He called him up and they, basically talked, and they're good. They're on the same page. And he probably said, hey, man, I know we talked about this role previously. You may remember, I guess, I never, officially offered it to you. I guess the dotted line wasn't signed. I know we spoke about it, but believe it or not, your character was cut out the script. There was a script change before the strikes even happened. So I understand that you may have not heard about it until the strikes ended, around about the time of your interview where you talked about your views on Palestine and everything like that. And as a result, you thought that maybe you lost your role because of your views, like other actors actually have out there in Hollywood. But that's not the case. So that's basically the situation. But the thing is, what also came out of this story is also super, super, super fascinating, because this basically gets into the leaks that we covered months and months and months ago about Superman Legacy, where we talked about how there was this conflict in the Middle East and how Superman goes over there, and apparently it was meant to be this big public event for Superman in the movie, kind of unlike anything public that he's got attention for before. The reason why this is fascinating, if I just get to the point here, James Gunn actually denied this leak before. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it or not, that this leak originally came from Grace Randolph. And as a result, you had people saying, please tell us that this, threat in the Middle East, not saying that word because of, demonetization, storyline rumor isn't true. And Gunn said it isn't true. Now, in another reply, these users said, so will there be any Middle East in this movie? And one user said, no, he debunked that rumor. The other guy says, no, he didn't. He just debunked that there would be no in the Middle East. And Gunn says, well, I thought I was debunking it all. Now, here's where things get interesting. This could be one of those situations in where Gunn, even though he said it's not true, and even though he said that he was debunking it all, a lot of people are now saying James Gunn was lying. But it's one of those technicalities in where maybe he wasn't. Now, before any of you call me, you're just shilling for Gunn, it's literally one of those things in where Gunn has said before, oh yeah, I never said Lex Luthor would be in the movie, and then Nicholas Hoult gets cast as Lex Luthor, he's clearly going to be in the movie. But it was a situation of, no, he wasn't lying, he's just never publicly said that Lex Luthor at that point in time would be in the movie. Now, at this point in time, well, technically, as we know, the script changes happened before the writer's strike. When he was asked about this leak about the Middle East and where it was claimed by Grace Randolph at the time, is it true? He says, it isn't true. Now, some of you may not like that, or you may be like, oh, it's just the semantics of the situation. This is being a bit pedant. No, like, if you want to look at it pretty objectively, you can't strictly call him a liar. But yes, he never acknowledged that it was once true. But that's the thing. He was asked directly, is there any Middle East in this movie? Is any of this leaky stuff to do with the conflict in the Middle East true? No, it's not true. I'm debunking it. That's the truth, right? But the thing is, it does turn out, especially as Gunn is saying this is accurate to the IGN article here, saying that Bassem Youssef was playing the character Rumour Hajavti. And now this character was the leader of Bialya. He was the dictator of that country, which is a country in the Middle East in the DCU. So, you know, when people put two and two together, it's like, oh, so those leaks about the conflict in the Middle East, so Superman flying over there, and you're casting the leader of that country, Rumour Hajavti. I think we can all acknowledge that Grace Randolph actually did indeed get a scoop that was correct. Now, I'm not throwing shade there, but you know what I mean. Like I say this about all scoopers. Sometimes, you know, well, a lot of the time they don't get things right, but occasionally they might get something right, and it turns out she did. Now, ever since this news came out, I guess Grace ruffled the feathers of her source, who actually did indeed tell her that true leak about Bialya, the character in Bialya, the Middle Eastern conflict in Superman Legacy. Maybe she reached out to that source again because she's now claiming that Superman's Legacy switched its conflict from the Middle East location to Eastern Europe. And obviously the reason why James Gunn would have done this, changed it before the writer's strike to not have this conflict in the Middle East, is because of, well, duh, it's kind of in poor taste to like have that in your movie given everything that's going on. But I guess the whole conflict, or the whole idea of Superman going somewhere in Superman Legacy, you know, to a whole different country, that part of the plot must be pretty integral if James Gunn still wants to keep it in, but just change the location. If we're to hypothetically assume that Grace Randolph's scoop here, the latest one, is still true. So just assuming, for the sake of argument here, that it is true, yeah, Superman flying somewhere else must be pretty important. They've just no longer made it the Middle East. It's somewhere in Eastern Europe. And I believe, I think this was expanded on, again, take this with a grain of salt, my God, but the reason why Superman might fly somewhere else is because he heard or has got wind that there's Kryptonian tech being transported by, I don't know if they're mercenaries or whatever, but given that Superman wants to learn more about his heritage, and this kind of does ring true to what James Gunn has said before in Superman Legacy, Clark Kent is kind of reconciling with his human upbringing, but alongside his Kryptonian heritage, right? So maybe he wants to learn a little bit more about it, and one way of doing that is that if he's somehow caught wind of how there's Kryptonian tech being recovered in different areas of the world, I don't know if it landed on Earth alongside his pod, but maybe he's been trying to get little pieces of the puzzle to collect it together to paint a bigger picture of where he came from, because he's been raised by Jonathan and Martha Kent this whole time on Earth, and he does love Earth. We know this about Superman, but maybe he isn't quite satisfied with how little he knows about Krypton. Now, that makes me wonder about Supergirl's role. You know, was Kara already on Earth by the time of Superman Legacy? I have been thinking about that until now. But yeah, this is all speculation at the end of the day. But the fact that Superman is going to a different country and that Grace Randolph is still claiming that is still part of the plot, it's just no longer the Middle East. If we are to believe the other part of the leak in where it's to do with him wanting to recover Kryptonian tech, then that would be pretty interesting, because Superman can still Superman. He can still wear the red cape and the suit and fly around Earth without fully understanding, you know, everything about Krypton. For example, like, what if the Fortress of Solitude, even though this isn't an origin story in Superman Legacy, like, he's been flying around as Superman, but let's just say there isn't a Fortress of Solitude. Maybe this Kryptonian tech gives him the crystal that goes on for him to even be able to create the Fortress of Solitude after he's recovered it from Eastern Europe. let's say. As I said, he can still be Superman. This can still not be an origin story. He can still have the House of L symbol from knowing what the pod looks like. Maybe it's got some stuff from there. It's just maybe there's other parts of his Kryptonian heritage in the movie that he's still going to bring to fruition. I've got a feeling the Fortress of Solitude might already be a thing, but that's just an example of what this Kryptonian tech could give to Superman, David Corenswet's Superman, in this movie, if we want to dive down the rabbit hole of theories about what this conflict in another country and Superman going over there could even be about. If the Kryptonian tech recovery operation that Superman is going on, that part of the rumor is even true in the first place, right? But it's interesting to note that the Middle Eastern leak was indeed true. But yeah, I don't think you can really call James Gunn a straight-up liar when he said it wasn't true, because by that point, it wasn't true. And he's not really going to divulge other aspects of the script, especially if a version of that story still remains true in his latest script. It's just in a different location. So let me know your thoughts on that. But now, in related kind of Superman Legacy news here, we have DCU updates actually uncovering something. Apparently, this was said back in January on this podcast, but apparently Chris DiStefano said that he has a callback audition for Superman Legacy. And in the little talk that they have here, I'm not going to show the clip because of just in case of copyright, but they joke about it being for the role of Superman, but obviously not. He said it's for some reporter or something. So I think we can all put it together that this would be for Steve Lombard. Like, as we know, we're all waiting for Daily Planet roles such as castings for Perry White, Steve Lombard, even obviously Jonathan and Martha Kent. So this is just a little tidbit. I don't know if that means he did get it, because he would have done it by now since this podcast interview was back in January. It's just that slipped through the cracks, and now it's getting people's attention. But it does make me think, what we know is that there's a table read last week, or it's this week. There was some conflicting information about that. But James Gunn admitted that obviously it's just going to be an intimate table read for those who kind of need to be there. You might not have some of the smaller roles in the movie. Even if Perry White might be in it quite a bit, you might not need him there. So everyone there has been cast, as James Gunn said, but that doesn't mean that other people, for example, Jonathan and Martha Kent might still need to be cast. Perry White might still need to be cast. Chris DiStefano, did he get the Steve Lombard? I don't know, but I hope that we do get announcements for it. Like, I mean, we've only got like a couple of weeks left until March. Now, granted, Superman Legacy doesn't mean that it starts filming March 1st. It might start filming March 8th. March 16th, I don't know, but if we do get announcements for these actors playing Ma and Pa Kent and various Daily Planet roles and other minor roles, I'm guessing we'll hear about them in the next few weeks. I mean, again, knowing my luck by the time I upload this video. But let me know what you think of that. I mean, obviously, given the character of Steve Lombard, a comedian playing that character, I'm not too familiar with Chris DiStefano, but what I will say is, just after seeing his demeanor, seeing him talk, watching a couple of videos of what he does, he does seem to... I do see what Gunn is going for, absolutely, with, obviously, the character of Steve Lombard. I mean, Steve Lombard is... I guess he's been portrayed in a few ways, but he is and can be that office kind of class clown, if you know what I mean. It depends how exactly they play him in this version of Superman Legacy, but you can imagine Clark and Lois rolling their eyes at him kind of thing, and maybe, just maybe, Chris did indeed get the role. Okay, so up next, we need to talk about the DCU's The Batman, The Brave and the Bold. All right, it's actually just called The Brave and the Bold. Let me know down in the comments if you think they're actually going to rename it to Batman, The Brave and the Bold, or is it just going to be The Brave and the Bold? But this, again, needs to be taken with a grain of salt, because John Roker, who we've referenced this sometimes just for the sake of hypothetically entertaining if a scoop is true kind of thing, let's talk about it, why not? He has claimed on his podcast with Jeff Snyder that, let's just say, The Brave and the Bold, and this is something that people have been speculating for a long, long time. He has said, and I'll read out the direct quote here, can I say this? I suppose I can. From what I've heard, he is not, and this is Andy Muschietti, he is not even doing The Brave and the Bold. That they're waiting to announce that, and that he knows he's not doing it, and that they're going to announce it a little bit later in the process. Again, I don't have the same sources that Jeff does, but I also don't talk about stuff unless I sense that it might be true. So, John Roker does admit that, hey, I'm just hearing this, man. I'm just hearing this. So that does need to be really taken into account here. He isn't put like a reporter journalist, so to speak, with loads and loads of sources, with a track record of getting this right, that right. Oh, he got the fantastic forecasting right, a year ago or anything like that. He just does hear things, and I guess some of the things that we've covered before still need to be confirmed or denied, and the same thing with this. Now, the reason why this is interesting is because it's something that a lot of people have been wondering about anyway. Now, Jeff Snyder, even in the same podcast later on, he even said to him, oh, you could have told me and I could have run it up the flagpole. So he's not really backing it up, but he does, I believe Jeff Snyder himself believes that, hey, maybe, why would you give Andy Muschietti the Brave and the Bold, your new Batman, something that's going to be very big for the DCU because it's obviously a diamond character, a very popular character. You're going to give it to the guy who, as Jeff Snyder put it here, lost over $200 million on the Flash movie kind of thing, right? Now, that is something, again, as per what a lot of you have been thinking. Should Andy Muschietti be directing the Batman Brave and the Bold movie when he directed The Flash, of which was absolutely like a terrible, absolutely crazy loss for DC? Now, here's the thing, that just because the Flash movie lost that money, it doesn't necessarily, even though as many people want to say it does, reflect directly on Andy Muschietti. Now, I know I'm going to get some people saying, Boba, are you stupid? What are you on about? He directed the movie. I've said, look, you guys know my thoughts about the Flash movie. You really do. But that movie had all kinds of things going against it. There's the whole Ezra Miller situation. It seems that a bunch of people knew about that. DC movies, just in the general space. Obviously, the general movie-going audience wasn't too interested at that point. I mean, every bloody movie post-Aquaman in the box office shows that. Not even making past $400 million until, guess what? Aquaman 2 did. So that's crazy. But also, Andy Muschietti did direct it. I 1000% obviously agree with that. That's a fact. A director has a lot of responsibilities, but he didn't write it. Do you know what I mean? An analogy of this would be, for example, if Matt Reeves didn't write The Batman, but he still directed it, you would still have gorgeous cinematography from Greg Fraser. You would have probably great directing decisions from Matt Reeves, but he might have been, if that was the case, he would be directing a story, let's just say, written by a writer who didn't really construct, I would say that Matt Reeves, or while there are some writing issues you can argue with The Batman, is way more competent of a writer than a lot of people in Hollywood when it comes to superhero movies. So let's just say Christina Hodson, who wrote the Flash movie, wrote The Batman with Robert Pattinson, Matt Reeves' Batman. But Matt Reeves directed it. You can easily argue that maybe it might not have been as good. You know what I mean? So I know that might be not a great defense, but I always try and think of everything I can. So whether you still say to me, yeah, but I still didn't like Andy Muschietti's directing for it, this, that, and the other, fair enough. You might not like him as a director, but Andy Muschietti didn't write the Flash movie. So as a result, that doesn't mean that James Gunn's just going to be like, oh, the Flash movie did bad. Oh my God, we've got to drop you now from the Brave and the Bold. It's not as like 1 + 1 = 2 with that. Do you know what I mean? Now, having said that, it's not outside the realms of possibility that, yeah, as John Roker is saying here, maybe they do know that he's been pulled from the film, and behind the scenes, they're actually trying to find somebody new, and they're gonna announce it later on. Like Andy, as he says here, they're waiting to announce that, and he knows he's not doing it, and they're going to announce it a little bit later in the process. But publicly, as of right now, Andy Muschietti is still kind of directing it, but actually behind the scenes, he isn't. This is the kind of situation where we don't know. I mean, officially right now, he is still directing it. I imagine if an announcement, let's just say John Roker is right here, if there was an announcement from Deadline, one of the major trades got the story here, it would be something like Andy Muschietti exits the Batman Brave and the Bold due to creative differences. That's what they would always say, because creative differences is always used, even if there are no creative differences and they just want to get rid of said director and, want to change direction. But yeah, I don't really know what to say about this, because I feel like I'm on both sides of the fence. I can kind of see what people are saying with how maybe optics-wise, there might be some people in Warner Brothers DC who are just kind of like, actually, maybe we should go with this director instead because of this, that, and the other, and maybe what a lot of you say about it. But then, as I argued, you could still be like, no, the Flash movie failed because of this, that, and the other. But Andy Muschietti, we believe in his direction. We think he's great. And we think paired with the best kind of writer that we can get for the Brave and the Bold story, this DCU Batman project with Damian Wayne coming in, with a great writer combined with Andy Muschietti's directing, we think he's going to do a great job. And that could be still why he will go on to be the director. But it's kind of a thing where we say, watch this space, stay subscribed to the channel, and we will find out if he is still the director. Or maybe James Gunn is going to be asked this, by the way, over on Threads. And maybe by the time I'm posting this video, he might, and this will be quite interesting. If somebody straight up asks him, this is the kind of thing that he would reply to. Is Andy Muschietti still directing Brave and the Bold? There are rumors out there that he might not be. It would be very interesting if James Gunn said, yes, like, I can debunk this, like, Andy is still directing it. For him to hammer down on that and reply to somebody publicly, let's just say he does, would probably mean that is absolutely true. Because if behind the scenes, maybe you got rid of him, you just, as James Gunn, probably wouldn't reply to all these people asking you about this rumor, would you? So it's going to be interesting to see if he does reply about that, because I imagine tons of people are asking him about it. So we're going to have to wait and see. That is everything I want to talk about today. It's been quite a rambly one, as usual. I wanted to do a bonus video today because this just felt like, too interesting to talk about given what happened. Even though I live streamed about it last night, I felt like I wanted to make an update for all of those people who obviously don't tune into live streams. But definitely turn those notifications on if you ever want to come and hang out in a live session on the channel. I tend to live stream twice a week, so it'd be great to see you there. But like this video, let YouTube know that you're enjoying my content by leaving a like on it. Again, consider subscribing. Let me know your thoughts down in that comment section. But just thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you people of the DCU in the next video. Goodbye.